Peter, let me ask you personally, what did you make or what do you make of the coronavirus, the lockdown, the distancing, the masks? I mean, let's face it, you're no spring chicken. You're probably target demographic for this disease, as I'm getting there as well. What do you make of it? Have you changed your behavior? Were you ever worried? And when you go out to Connecticut in the next couple of weeks, like, I don't know, what do you personally think of it all? And the vaccine?
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, I have changed my behavior because, I mean, I can err on being cautious. I mean, I think the government probably drummed up a lot of hysteria that probably isn't warranted. But yes, I mean, my behavior has changed. I mean, a lot of it is because the government has kind of forced me to change my behavior, whether I would have done it or not. But look, I mean, I'm flying up to Connecticut. We're taking a private flight rather than dealing with the commercial. Now, I don't have to do that. The government's not forcing me to do that. But I just feel that air travel is going to be such a hassle now. And the ticket costs have really, really gone up. So it's not as, it's more to fly private, but it's not as much more as it was. But look, yes, I mean, I'm not going to have to deal with the airport. I'm not going to deal with the security. I'm not going to have to wear a mask. I'm not going to have my temperature checked. I mean, so that behavior. Now, if they weren't requiring all this stuff, maybe I would feel differently. But look, I mean, I think that the government has overreacted. That's my take. I don't think that COVID-19 is anywhere near as deadly as they held it out to be. In fact, I didn't think that from the beginning. I do recognize that certain people have an elevated risk if they catch it, that they could die. I mean, I think a third of the people who catch it don't even develop symptoms. So it doesn't even matter if they get it. They're not even going to know. And then most of the ones who do become symptomatic, if you don't have any other problems, you're just going to get over it the way you would get over any cold or any flu that you might catch. But yes, if you're older, if you're in your 80s, if you have high blood pressure, if you're obese, if you have all sorts of other factors that complicate everything that you might get, yes, you could be particularly vulnerable to this disease, and you might want to, stay away. I mean, one of the reasons that I even thought about my behavior is my mother is living with me. She's 79. She's also flying with us up to Connecticut. So part of it is like, hey, I'm not even as worried. I'm 57. I think I'm in good shape. But my mom's almost 80. I mean, do I want to give something to my mom, or do I want one of my kids? I'm not worried about my young kids. They'll be fine. But yeah, my mother who lives with us. But even my mom is not that worried about it. I mean, she's like, look, I mean, I don't have that many years left. I don't want to spend them all in isolation. I mean, I want to live my life. I don't want to just be afraid. I mentioned, I go skiing. I haven't been in a couple of years, but I see people in their 70s and 80s on the slopes. I mean, don't they realize how much they can hurt themselves if they fall? Your bones get pretty brittle. But people want to do what they enjoy. A lot of it is the quality of life, not just the longevity of your life. But I think our decisions in America were really skewed because of the bailouts and the stimulus. I think if you look at a country like Sweden, right? Sweden is not part of the euro, right? They issue their own currency, so there's nobody to bail them out, right? They're their own taxing authority. So I think Sweden, when they looked at the alternatives, okay, should we order the shutdown of the economy? Should we order businesses to close? Should we force people to stay at home? What is the economic cost of those decisions going to be relative to the health benefits that we might get from keeping everybody at home? And I think they did the analysis and they decided that the benefits were not worth the costs. And, and they made a decision. But I don't think, let's say, a lot of the members of the European Union, where they can rely on the ECB to print money for them and push off the costs on their neighbors, I think that moral hazard impacted the decision. Now, in the UK, again, a little different because the UK, they print their own money. So they still had to deal with the consequences. And I think initially the British were kind of thinking about doing the Swedish model. They kind of got pressured, I think, into taking a different tack. But I think in the United States, the moral hazards were greater than anywhere in the world. Because what happens in US states is the states were like, hey, we can order our businesses closed because the federal government is going to bail everybody out. The federal government is going to pay all of our citizens, all of our residents, right, that aren't working. So they're going to get money from Washington. It cost us nothing. They're going to get money from the Federal Reserve. And in fact, now the state governments are wanting to be bailed out from the tax revenues that they're losing. See, Sweden wouldn't have had anybody to bail them out. Any tax revenues they lost would be gone. If they needed the money, they would have to tax their own people. But you have people in California, they think, oh, we shut down our economy. Let's get the U.S. government to send us the tax revenue we're no longer collecting. So everybody thinks the money's for free because it's coming from Washington instead of their own capitals, and because the Fed is creating it out of thin air, right? You have, look at New York State. New York State is saying we need money. We want Washington to send it. Well, you got a lot of billionaires that are living in New York State. Why can't Mayor Cuomo tax New Yorkers? If they need money, get it from New York. But they're saying, no, we got to get it from the federal government. And the federal government has been providing it. We have these massive bailouts coming from the federal government. We're actually paying people more money while they're unemployed than they were earning when they had jobs. So, I mean, a lot of people living in these states are making more money now because they're not working than when they were working. Except when they were working, they were actually contributing something to society. They were producing goods. They were providing services. Now they're doing nothing. They're at home watching Netflix, and spending their stimulus money on Amazon, which is, importing stuff from China. All we're doing is creating inflation. But I think that moral hazard really impacted it because there was no cost-benefit analysis. All the state governors were looking at the benefits and none of the costs. I think if Trump and Congress had made it clear from the start, look, whatever you decide to do on a state level, you need to fund it on the state level. So if you put your people on unemployment, you deal with it. If you shut down businesses, you deal with the consequences. Each state has to fend for itself and bear the consequences to pay the costs of its own decisions. And I think had we done that, I think a lot of these states would have taken a different path than the one they chose when they were not responsible for any of the costs and they could just look at the benefit.